Soul Simmers, welcome to the Builders Bootcamp, your ultimate training ground for learning how to build in The Sims. Whether you're a beginner or someone who's looking to level up their skills, this series will take you from the beginner tips to the pro level builds. This is the 2025 updated edition of the series that I did in 2022, since we've had quite a couple of build updates in The Sims, and it will cover everything that you need to know to create your dream builds in the game. So grab your blueprints and let's get to building. So in part 6 of the Builders Bootcamp, we are gonna talk about doors and windows. And you might think to yourself, but isn't this a really simple topic? But there is more to it than meets the eye. So let's actually dive into the game so I can show you. So let's get started where to find doors and windows. You can find them over here in the doors and the windows right next to it. So something that is good to immediately see with the doors and windows is that you have doors and windows for different wall heights. If you go into the tall wall height, you might see that they're all grayed out because we're currently not building on tall wall height. If you change the wall height to the tall wall, then these will become available. This sometimes can be slightly frustrating because there might be a door that you really like that just doesn't fit on your wall height. So this is the first thing that you're going to have to keep in mind. Also in terms of like maybe exploring the doors and the style of your build before fully settling on the wall height. That is why I also wanted to make sure to make a separate episode, because the doors and the windows might seem very obvious, but there are actually quite some considerations to take into account. For instance, I would wait with decorating anything in your build until you've actually added doors and windows, because otherwise changing the wall height afterwards might be an absolute pain in the ass. Secondly, doors and windows obviously are very reliant on the floor plan. How to make a good floor plan is one of the later episodes of the Builders Bootcamp, so don't worry, I'm gonna help you on how to figure that out as well. But I would recommend that if you're placing doors and windows, first play around with it a little bit so you understand the mechanics, but when you're actually going to decorate your build, don't add the doors and windows all the way in the end when you've already decorated. I can tell you from experience that if you've decorated a bunch of walls very cutely and you then have to add windows, it just becomes this really annoying process of basically having to backtrack your work. So it's kind of one of those things where a lot of decision making into the build will eventually influence what doors and what windows you're going to use. Then next to being able to pick the right door and window for the wall height, you can also see that there are 3 curvature settings, which is supports regular walls, supports large and extra large curved walls, and supports all curved walls. Unfortunately in The Sims, we got curved walls, but they were never really executed that well. So a lot of doors and windows actually do not work on curved walls. So I'll show you with an example of a beautiful door that fits, was supposed to fit perfectly in this actually pretty straight section of wall. There is not even a curve here yet, but simply because the curve technically starts on that part of the wall, this door completely glitches out. The Sims did offer a solution for this, and they gave you an option to see the doors and windows that work on curved and slightly curved walls. So this door is also supposed to work on the curved wall. Well, I don't really believe it, to be honest. It does work on the middle section, but it doesn't necessarily work on the curved part. To be honest, only single doors I have found work somewhat okay on the curved part, and a lot of them, depending on the curve of the wall, will still glitch out. So this is just a little disclaimer. If you do end up making a build and there is going to be curved walls, keep in mind that you are making it a bit harder for yourself to place doors and windows. Now that you've seen the doors, let me also show you the windows. They have the same settings for the different wall heights, and they also have the same settings for the curvature of the walls. If you go to the fully curved walls, you can see that there is a very, very small selection. Curved walls actually came with high school years, and as you can see, there are very few windows that The Sims have actually updated or that came with the pack that curve around the wall. Other than that, you're kind of stuck with windows like this that also don't really fit on the curved wall, if I'm being honest. They mostly fit on the straight part, just like any other window. And then we have a couple, and with a couple, I mean like literally maybe we have 2. I think these are the only 2 windows when it comes to the short wall height. I don't even know if we have separated tall wall heights. We don't even have separate tall wall height windows that will curve with the wall. So that means that if you are working with curved walls, you are very, very, very limited in what windows you can use. This one technically curves with it as well, so I have to give them that credit. But as you can see, it doesn't curve perfectly because as soon as you add it onto one of the walls with a curve, the window will fully curve and it starts to completely glitch out. So I feel like I cannot stress this enough of how important it is to understand this, because I think a lot of people get very excited and enthusiastic about curved walls and then realize that windows and doors actually kind of suck for it. So now that we've gotten the sucky part out of the way, let's get into the fun part. Because since my last Builders Bootcamp, there have actually been one major important update when it comes to windows and doors. And that is that windows are stackable. So when I started playing The Sims, we weren't able to do this. We weren't able to stack windows like this. Obviously, this isn't the best example because this window isn't a very stackable window anyways, but we do actually have a bunch of windows that are very stackable, like these smaller ones, which you can just create custom window patterns if you want. You can free place windows. This was something that wasn't possible until quite a long time in The Sims, meaning that you were super restricted on how you would place your windows. Of course, I would still make sure that if you start getting really creative with your window placement, that it actually looks good, both from the outside and the inside, but also that it isn't glitching, because if you place a window like this, as you can see, it doesn't work very well with going above the wall limit. So like placing windows in between two floors still kind of glitches out pretty badly. So as you can see, it isn't perfect yet. It isn't like the one system that we all hoped for, but actually I'm pretty happy with being able to stack windows. I use it all the time to create really fun shapes with my windows, to create a more interesting build, to maybe sometimes create specific like shower walls. You can also use this one and like stack it on just a wall piece, and then you can kind of create almost like this separation. You can use the combination of windows and half walls to do that. So you can get really creative now that you can stack windows. Doors will still snap to like the ground floor of a build, so you can't really stack doors, but you can place two doors really close to each other, technically creating like a fake double door if you wanted to, by rotating them this way. In case you wonder how I just rotated, I'm using the period and the comma key on my keyboard again. But in case you're looking for a door and you cannot really find what you want, you can always combine doors like this. If you're in game, your Sims will always choose one of the two doors to actually walk through, but in the end that doesn't really matter. I think it still can look pretty cool from the outside. Then something that is also very nice with the windows is there is actually a thing that is called windows by room. And I personally have to admit that I never use this, but I just want to make sure that you know it's there. So if you grab a window, you can actually let the Sims place the windows automatically. I am not entirely sure whether this is a feature that I like or I don't like. I think this is very nice for people that are starting out with building. The biggest upside from this is that it actually places all the windows on the same height, and I think you could create really fun build challenges for yourself this way by saying place the windows per room and then allowing yourself to make a floor plan based on the window placement. Again, this is probably not going to be relevant for everyone. I think this feature to a degree can be more annoying than helpful, but it is good to know what it does and how it works. So now that you know how to place windows, you know that you can stack them, you know how to work with round walls and different wall heights. Obviously, the most important question remains, and that is how can you make sure that your windows and doors actually match your build? Apart from scrolling endlessly in the long list of doors and windows we have, especially if you have multiple expansion packs, is changing swatches. I have already talked a little bit about changing swatches in my previous video, but I'm just going to reiterate this just in case people are watching just this video or they might have missed it in my previous video. So if you hover over an item in The Sims, it will show you the swatches menu. Often windows come in a wide variety of different swatches, sometimes even dual tone swatches that allow you to really customize your build. This way you can make sure that your window, for instance, has a white frame so that it actually matches the wallpaper that you picked. This is also super useful if you're picking windows that are a little bit more dramatic, like these ones, where even the tinted glass changes color based on the swatch that you pick. For windows and doors, the designer tool, which you can also access by pressing R on your keyboard, does actually work. So if you want to go back and change a color after you've already placed it, like I I've explained in the previous video, that doesn't work on wallpapers and flooring, but it does work on windows and doors. You can quite easily go in here. So if you decide to change the wallpaper and then you're like, my windows and doors don't match anymore, you can still use that designer tool to kind of backtrack your decision making and change the colors as well. Something that is good to know is that you cannot size up or down windows and doors. I haven't really explained anything about sizing up items in the game. We're going to get to that in a later part of the Builder's Bootcamp, but obviously people that are watching the Builder's Bootcamp might already know some things about building. So just in case you do already have some prior knowledge of building in the game and you know how to size up and down objects, let me show you what happens if you start doing that with windows. It doesn't really work. This is probably something that you can also find by just testing it out yourself, but you might be thinking that your game is broken, and I just wanted to make sure to mention in this specific video, it's not your game being broken. Doors and windows, unfortunately, cannot be sized up or sized down in this game. Another thing that is good to know is that by default, you cannot place windows outside of a wall, and it might be harder to stack windows or to combine windows like I did before if you don't have a specific cheat on. I will also get to this cheat in another episode. I feel like with building, I'm trying to keep the explanation as straightforward as possible and bundle topics, but sometimes it's still useful to add on to things and already mention something, because I feel like the cheat bb.moveobjects is a very popular one, and people simply might know of its existence and not know what it exactly does. So if you type Ctrl-Shift-C, which brings up your cheat menu, you can type bb.moveobjects and then space and then type on. So this is the cheat. I will also make sure to put it in the description box down below so you can copy and paste it if you want to. And then you hit enter. It will give you the confirmation that the cheat is on. If you don't get the confirmation, the cheat didn't go correctly. From this moment onwards, you are able to basically let options intersect. The reason this is a cheat is because if you do this too often, or if you do this too much, or if you don't take basically the action box around an item into consideration, your Sims will glitch out and the gameplay will be impacted. So the Sims team added this as an option for you to use, but it's not by default enabled, because if you use it wrong, it will basically interfere with your gameplay. From this moment on, you can also place windows where there is no wall. This can be super interesting in creating custom shower separations, or maybe even splitting up a room in between a kitchen and a living room. You can get really creative with this. Important to know is that as soon as you get close to a wall, it will like snap to the wall, and you cannot really move it unless you move quite far away from it. And also good to know is that to rotate a window, you can't use your period and comma key. So if you want to rotate it the other way around, you're basically gonna have to let it snap to a wall with the right orientation and then drag it out again. Then you can place it like this. If you then want to rotate it, you're gonna have to snap it like this and then drag it out again. It's not ideal, but it's these little tips and tricks that hopefully enable you to be a more creative builder, and therefore I wanted to make sure to include them in this video. So now you know how to place windows, you know how to place doors, you know how to customize them, you know how to deal with round walls, and you even know how to get more creative by enabling a cheat. I know that this is a little bit of a shorter episode, but I wanted to make sure to separate it to prevent other episodes from becoming too long. But I hope you learned something new in this episode. If you did, let me know in the comments down below. And if this episode of the Builder's Bootcamp was helpful, please toss it a cheeky like. If you're not subscribed to my channel yet, feel free to check out all of the other videos that I've made for the Builder's Bootcamp. Make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the future episodes, or if you just in general like to see Sims videos, because I make videos about anything The Sims. And with all of that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye everyone!